use them as things to raise money for auctions and various things and send to fans, stuff like that when people would write. Everything's gone now. I don't have anything left.
Remember when Rick Moranis was everywhere, shrinking kids, busting ghosts, and stealing every scene with his quirky charm? Then, seemingly overnight, he vanished from Hollywood. No scandals, no burnout, just gone. So why did one of the 80s most beloved comedy stars walk away at the height of his fame? The answer isn't just surprising, it's heartbreaking. Stick around, because the real reason will change the way you see him forever. The rise of a comedy legend. Let's rewind to the early 1980s when Rick Moranis was just starting to make his mark. This wasn't some overnight success story. Rick had been grinding away on Canadian television, particularly with SCTV, where his brilliant impressions and comedic timing caught the attention of Hollywood scouts. But it was 1984 that changed everything. That's when Rick stepped into the role of Louis Tully in Ghostbusters, the nerdy accountant who gets possessed by Vince Clortho. His performance was absolutely magnetic. Here was this small, unassuming guy, holding his own alongside comedy giants like Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. The film was a massive hit, earning over $295 million worldwide. Suddenly, every studio in Hollywood wanted Rick Moranis on their payroll. And honestly, who could blame them? The guy had this incredible ability to make even the most ridiculous situations feel genuine and heartfelt. Then came 1986, and Rick delivered what many consider his career-defining performance in Little Shop of Horrors. Playing Seymour Krelborn, the timid flower shop employee who discovers a bloodthirsty plant, Rick showed he wasn't just funny, he could sing, act, and carry an entire musical on his shoulders. The film was both a critical and commercial success. Rick's rendition of Suddenly Seymour became iconic, and his chemistry with Ellen Greene was absolutely electric. Hollywood had found its new leading man, and Rick Moranis was on top of the world. But the real game changer came in 1987 with Spaceballs. Mel Brooks's brilliant Star Wars parody gave Rick the chance to play Dark Helmet, one of the most quotable villains in comedy history. "I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate," became an instant classic line. Rick wasn't just acting in these films, he was creating characters that would live in pop culture forever. His Dark Helmet was simultaneously threatening and ridiculous, a perfect balance that only Rick could pull off. By the late 1980s, Rick Moranis had become one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. He was commanding serious money, had his pick of projects, and fans absolutely adored him. Everything was perfect, or so it seemed. Family comes first. Behind the scenes, Rick's personal life was flourishing too. In 1986, he married Ann Belsky, a talented makeup and costume designer who had worked on shows like Late Night with David Letterman and Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Ann wasn't just beautiful, she was brilliant, creative, and completely supportive of Rick's career. They were that rare Hollywood couple that seemed genuinely happy together. Soon, they welcomed 2 children, a son named Mitchell and a daughter named Rachel. For a while, Rick managed to balance everything perfectly. He was the devoted family man at home and the comedy superstar on set. In 1989, he starred in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which became one of Disney's biggest hits of the year. The film grossed over $222 million worldwide and spawned an entire franchise. Rick's portrayal of Wayne Szalinski, the absent-minded inventor who accidentally shrinks his kids, was both hilarious and touching. He brought such warmth to the role that audiences couldn't help but root for him. The film's success proved that Rick could carry a family movie just as easily as he could steal scenes in ensemble comedies. Life was good. Rick had a loving wife, 2 beautiful children, and a career that most actors could only dream of. He was living the Hollywood dream. But sometimes, life has other plans. In 1991, tragedy struck the Moranis household in the most devastating way possible. Anne was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was only 35 years old, with 2 young children and a husband who adored her. The diagnosis came like a bolt from the blue, shattering their perfect world. Rick immediately shifted his priorities. While Anne fought bravely against the disease, he tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy for their children. But cancer is a ruthless enemy. And despite all the love, hope, and medical care in the world, Anne lost her battle on 4th of February, 1991. She died just 1 day before her 35th birthday. A heartbreaking choice. The loss devastated Rick. In interviews years later, he rarely spoke about Anne's death in detail, but those close to him described a man completely shattered by grief. He had lost his best friend, his creative partner, and the love of his life. Suddenly, Rick found himself a single father to 2 young children who had just lost their mother. Mitchell and Rachel needed their dad more than ever, and Rick knew he had to step up in ways he had never imagined. But here's the thing about Hollywood. It doesn't stop for anyone's grief. The scripts kept coming, the offers kept pouring in, and the industry expected Rick to continue being the comedy superstar everyone loved. The show, as they say, must go on. For a while, Rick tried to make it work. He continued taking roles, hoping that somehow he could balance his career with being a full-time single parent. He appeared in films like The Flintstones in 1994, where he played Barney Rubble alongside John Goodman's Fred Flintstone. The film was a huge commercial success, earning over $341 million worldwide. Rick's performance was praised, and fans were thrilled to see him back on the big screen. But those close to him could see the strain. He was going through the motions, doing his job professionally, but the joy seemed to have gone out of it. The demands of Hollywood were brutal. Long shooting schedules, promotional tours, and press conferences all meant time away from Mitchell and Rachel, who desperately needed their father present and available. Rick began turning down more and more projects. He started being incredibly selective about what he would and wouldn't do. The man who had once been eager to take on any interesting role was now asking himself one simple question: is this worth being away from my kids? More often than not, the answer was no. The quiet goodbye. By 1997, Rick made a decision that shocked Hollywood, but made perfect sense to anyone who understood what he had been through. He stepped away from live-action filmmaking, not with a big announcement or a dramatic farewell tour, just quietly, like someone slipping out of a party when no one's looking. In his own words, "I'm a single parent, and I just found that it was too difficult to manage to raise my kids and to do the traveling involved in making movies. So I took a little bit of a break. But it was important to me. I have absolutely no regrets whatsoever. My life is wonderful." Think about that for a moment. Here was a man at the absolute peak of his career. He could have had any role he wanted, commanded millions per film, and continued being one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Instead, he chose his children. In an industry known for broken families and absent parents, Rick Moranis made the radical choice to actually be present for his kids. He didn't want Mitchell and Rachel to grow up with memories of a father who was always on set, always traveling, always too busy for them. The decision was about emotional availability. Rick was dealing with his own grief, while trying to help his children process the loss of their mother. That kind of healing required presence, patience, and unconditional love. Hollywood didn't quite know what to make of Rick's choice. Agents and producers kept calling, offering bigger paychecks and more prestigious projects. Surely he would change his mind. Surely the lure of the spotlight would bring him back. But Rick was resolute. He had found something more valuable than fame or fortune, the opportunity to be the father his children needed. Life beyond the spotlight. When Rick Moranis stepped away from Hollywood, he didn't fade into obscurity. He shifted into the role of a full-time dad. His days became filled with school pickups, helping with homework, attending soccer games, and all the ordinary but meaningful moments that define parenthood. Importantly, Rick never made a grand announcement about retiring. He simply chose projects that allowed him to stay present for his children, leaving the demanding world of live-action filmmaking behind, while keeping the door open for smaller creative outlets. One of those outlets was voice acting, which became the perfect balance between work and family life. Rick lent his voice to commercials and animated projects, keeping his creative spark alive while avoiding the grueling schedules of on-set production. At the same time, studios often tried to lure him back with offers for sequels, new comedies, and major projects that could have reignited his career instantly. Yet, he consistently turned them down, prioritizing his family's needs and proving that his commitment to fatherhood outweighed any potential career resurgence. Beyond parenting, Rick found fulfillment in exploring other creative interests. He moved his family to a quieter corner of New York, far from Hollywood's constant glare, trading red carpets for parent-teacher meetings and birthday parties. With the pressure of commercial success behind him, Rick also dabbled in music, writing, and personal creative projects. Work done not for fame or money, but for the joy of creating itself. In many ways, his time away from the spotlight allowed him to lead a richer, more balanced life than Hollywood could ever have offered. The staying power of a legend. Here's what's remarkable about Rick's story. Even after disappearing from Hollywood for over 2 decades, people never forgot him. His films continued to find new audiences through home video, cable TV, and eventually streaming services. Kids who weren't even born when Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was released discovered it on Disney Plus and fell in love with Wayne Szalinski. Teenagers found Spaceballs on Netflix and couldn't stop quoting Dark Helmet. College students watched Ghostbusters for the first time and were amazed by Louis Tully's comedic timing. Rick had achieved something that most actors never do. His work became timeless. While many of his contemporaries continued churning out films with diminishing returns, Rick's small but perfect filmography continued to delight audiences decades later. The internet age only amplified this phenomenon. Memes featuring Rick's characters spread across social media. YouTube compilations of his best moments rack up millions of views. Fan communities dedicated to his films continue to thrive online. But perhaps most importantly, Rick's decision to prioritize family over fame resonated with people in ways that surprised him. In interviews, he received countless letters from parents who said his choice inspired them to reassess their own priorities. Whispers of a comeback. For years, fans speculated about whether Rick would ever return to acting. Every few months, some entertainment blog would run a story with a headline like, "Rick Moranis spotted at Hollywood restaurant, comeback imminent." Most of these stories were wishful thinking, but they showed how much people missed him. Then, in 2020, something unexpected happened. Ryan Reynolds announced that Rick had agreed to appear in a commercial for Mint Mobile. It was just a 30-second spot, But seeing Rick on screen again after so many years sent the internet into a frenzy. The commercial was brilliant in its simplicity. Rick played himself, slightly older, but with the same deadpan humor that had made him famous. When Reynolds' character expressed amazement at seeing him, Rick replied with perfect timing, "I only do this for the money." It was vintage Rick Moranis, self-deprecating, funny, and completely unpredictable. The commercial went viral, reminding everyone why they had fallen in love with him in the first place. Around the same time, Disney announced that Rick had signed on for a reboot of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. The project, tentatively titled Shrunk, would see Rick reprising his role as Wayne Selinsky, now a grandfather dealing with his son's family. The announcement broke the internet. After more than 20 years away from live-action films, Rick Moranis was officially coming back. Fans rejoiced, entertainment reporters scrambled to get interviews, and Hollywood collectively held its breath. But then, as quietly as the project had been announced, it disappeared. The film was reportedly canceled due to various production issues and scheduling conflicts. Once again, Rick faded back into his private life. Was this a sign that Rick had changed his mind about returning? Or were the circumstances simply not right? Nobody knows for sure, and Rick isn't saying. The man behind the legend. Today, Rick Moranis remains true to the values that defined his life long before Hollywood fame. Now, in his 70s, he enjoys a quiet life split between New York and Toronto, keeping his health and spirits intact while staying close to family. His greatest achievement, by his own and his children's accounts, is raising Mitchell and Rachel into well-adjusted, successful adults. Friends and family describe him as content, fulfilled, and proud of the life he built outside the entertainment spotlight, proving that his decision to prioritize fatherhood was the right one. What sets Rick apart is not just his career accomplishments, but the choices he made afterward. While many actors chase fame indefinitely, he walked away at the peak of his success, choosing to dedicate himself fully to his children. In doing so, he challenged society's fixation on career over personal fulfillment. Despite passing on roles and opportunities that could have extended his stardom, he has never expressed regret. Instead, he's remained grateful for the career he once had, and even more so for the time he gained with his family. A perspective that has only enhanced his legacy. Looking back, Rick's story feels even more meaningful in today's entertainment culture, where privacy is nearly impossible, and public personas are carefully curated around social media. His ability to remain beloved while living privately is a rarity, and his life serves as proof that success can be measured in more than box office numbers or awards. Even when asked about a potential return to acting, his trademark humility shines through with responses like, "Never say never." Ultimately, Rick Moranis represents a kind of wisdom and authenticity that feels timeless, making his decision to step away appear even wiser as the pressures of modern fame continue to grow. The enduring appeal. What is it about Rick Moranis that continues to captivate audiences decades after his last major film role? Part of it is certainly nostalgia. His movies are comfort food for people who grew up in the 80s and 90s, but there's something deeper at work here. Rick represented a different kind of leading man. He wasn't the typical Hollywood hunk with perfect hair and bulging muscles. He was the everyman, the guy next door, the person you could actually imagine knowing in real life. His characters were flawed, awkward, and utterly relatable. In an industry full of larger-than-life personalities, Rick was refreshingly normal. Even at the height of his fame, he seemed uncomfortable with celebrity culture. He rarely gave interviews, avoided the party scene, and focused on his craft rather than his image. This authenticity translated into his performances. Whether he was playing a nerdy accountant, a mad scientist, or a bumbling villain, Rick brought genuine humanity to every role. You believed these characters existed because Rick made them feel real. His comedy was also remarkably clean and family-friendly without being childish or dumbed down. Rick proved that you could be hilariously funny without resorting to crude humor or mean-spirited jokes. His wit was clever, his timing was perfect, and his heart was always in the right place. A different kind of success story. In Hollywood, success is typically measured in box office receipts, award nominations, and career longevity. By those metrics, Rick's decision to step away might seem like a waste of talent. But Rick has redefined what success looks like. He's spoken about having a wonderful life at home with his kids, describing his years as a full-time father as the most fulfilling of his life. That's a kind of success that can't be quantified in dollars or accolades. Rick's story also highlights the impossible choices that many working parents face, particularly single parents. The difference is that Rick had the financial resources to actually choose family over career. Most people don't have that luxury, but Rick's example shows what's possible when we prioritize what truly matters. There's also something to be said for going out on top. Rick's filmography is remarkably consistent. He doesn't have any late career disasters or embarrassing cash grabs that tarnish his legacy. Every Rick Moranis movie is at least entertaining, and most are genuinely great. By stepping away when he did, Rick preserved not just his reputation, but also our memories of him. We remember him at his peak, full of energy and creativity, rather than as someone desperately trying to recapture past glory. The mystery continues. So, where does Rick Moranis go from here? At 70 years old, with his children grown and successful, does he have any desire to return to the spotlight? The honest answer is that nobody knows, and that's exactly how Rick likes it. Recent rumors suggest that he might be open to the right project. Reports indicate that he's being wooed for a potential comeback in reboots of his classic films like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, or Spaceballs. But Rick has proven that he can't be rushed or pressured into decisions. If he does return, it will be entirely on his terms. He's earned the right to be incredibly selective about what projects he takes on. At this stage of his life, he doesn't need to work for money or validation. He can simply choose projects that genuinely excite him. There's also the possibility that Rick is perfectly content with his current life and has no interest in returning to acting at all. And if that's the case, who can blame him? He's lived an incredibly full life, achieved more success than most actors ever will, and raised 2 wonderful children as a single father. Maybe the real question isn't whether Rick will come back, but whether we need him to. His existing body of work continues to entertain and inspire new generations of fans. His personal story of choosing family over fame resonates more deeply than any movie role ever could. The projects that never were. Hollywood has never stopped trying to bring Rick Moranis back into the fold, with his name frequently attached to both real offers and speculative projects. One of the most persistent rumors centered around a third Ghostbusters film, particularly Ghostbusters: Afterlife. Fans and filmmakers alike hoped he would reprise his role, even in a brief cameo, but Rick ultimately declined, believing it wouldn't feel authentic after so many years. Despite multiple approaches and the promise of a lucrative payday, he chose not to participate, staying true to his principles. Similarly, Pixar and other studios reportedly pursued him for voice acting roles, knowing his unique voice and comedic timing would shine in animation. Yet he remained highly selective about what projects he considered. What makes Rick's story even more intriguing are the whispers about creative work he developed privately during his Hollywood absence. Friends have hinted that he wrote scripts and concepts, though he never pushed them into production. These shelved projects, combined with the constant interest from studios, highlight his enduring value in the industry. Even decades removed from the spotlight, Rick Moranis is still regarded as a performer and creator whose presence could instantly bring both critical respect and commercial success, a rare feat that speaks to the timelessness of his appeal. The influence on modern comedy. Rick Moranis may have stepped away from Hollywood, but his influence on comedy continues to ripple through the industry. Watch any modern comedy, and you'll likely spot elements that can be traced back to Rick's groundbreaking work in the 1980s. His approach to playing the everyman hero paved the way for comedic actors like Michael Cera, Jesse Eisenberg, and Jonah Hill. These actors have all cited Rick as an inspiration, praising his ability to make awkward, neurotic characters genuinely likable and heroic. The success of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids also helped establish the template for family-friendly sci-fi comedies that dominated the 1990s and beyond. Films like The Mask, Jumanji, and even the Marvel Cinematic Universe owe a debt to Rick's ability to ground fantastical concepts in relatable family dynamics. Rick's work with Mel Brooks on Spaceballs showed how parody films could be both hilarious and heartfelt. This influenced everything from the Scary Movie franchise to more recent spoofs like The Other Guys and Tropic Thunder. But few have matched Rick's ability to find genuine emotion within absurd situations. Contemporary comedians often reference Rick in interviews and stand-up routines, not just for his performances, but for his decision to prioritize family. In an industry known for broken relationships and absent parents, Rick's choice resonates with performers who struggle to balance their careers with their personal lives. Comedy writers frequently cite Rick's characters as examples of perfect character development. His ability to create memorable, quotable characters with just a few key traits has become a masterclass studied in screenwriting courses around the world. Even his absence has become influential, inspiring other actors to be more selective about their projects and prioritize their personal lives over constant work. The financial freedom factor. One aspect of Rick's story that often gets overlooked is the financial security that made his choice possible. By the time he stepped away from Hollywood, Rick had earned enough money to support his family comfortably without needing to work constantly. His films from the 1980s and early 1990s were not just critical successes, they were massive moneymakers. Ghostbusters alone earned nearly $300 million worldwide, and Rick's back-end deal meant he continued earning from its success long after filming wrapped. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids became one of Disney's biggest hits, spawning sequels, theme park attractions, and merchandise that generated residual income for years. Rick's smart business decisions during his peak years created a financial cushion that allowed him to make choices based on personal values rather than economic necessity. This financial freedom is crucial to understanding Rick's story. Most actors can't afford to turn down major roles or take extended breaks from their careers. Rick's success gave him a luxury that few in Hollywood possess: the ability to say no to projects that didn't align with his priorities. But Rick has never flaunted his wealth or lived extravagantly. Friends describe him as remarkably down-to-earth for someone who could afford any lifestyle he wanted. His modest approach to money seems to reflect his overall philosophy about life. Success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by the relationships you nurture. The residual payments from his classic films continue to provide income, meaning Rick never had to worry about making ends meet while focusing on raising his children. This economic security was essential in allowing him to be the present, available father he wanted to be. The impact of tragedy on creativity. Ann Belsky's death didn't just change Rick's personal life, it fundamentally altered his relationship with his craft. Those who worked with Rick before and after 1991 noticed a profound shift in how he approached acting and comedy. Before Ann's death, Rick's performances had a certain lightness and spontaneity. He seemed to genuinely enjoy the process of making people laugh, finding joy in the collaborative nature of filmmaking. His energy on set was infectious, and directors often spoke about how much fun it was to work with him. After losing Ann, Rick's approach became more measured and purposeful. He was still professional and talented, but the carefree joy seemed to have dimmed. Some critics noted that his later performances, while technically excellent, lacked some of the spark that had made his earlier work so magical. This shift wasn't necessarily negative. It was simply different. Rick's post-tragedy performances had a depth and gravitas that perhaps wouldn't have been possible without experiencing such profound loss. His final film roles showed an actor who had lived through real pain and emerged with a deeper understanding of life's complexities. The experience also influenced Rick's choices about what stories he wanted to tell. He became less interested in pure comedy and more drawn to projects that dealt with real human emotions and relationships. This evolution might have led to an entirely new phase of his career if he had chosen to continue acting. Many actors who have experienced similar losses have channeled their grief into their work, creating some of their most powerful performances. Rick chose a different path. Rather than using his pain as artistic fuel, he focused on healing and rebuilding his life around his children. The Cult of Rick Moranis. Rick Moranis has managed to build a rare kind of legacy in the internet age, one that thrives without his active participation. Online communities across Reddit, YouTube, and TikTok continue to celebrate his work, ensuring his films remain relevant for new generations. What makes this enduring fascination unique is that Rick has become a symbol of authenticity in a world dominated by calculated celebrity culture. His absence from the spotlight has only deepened his cultural value, creating a mystique that feels more genuine than manufactured. Fans don't just celebrate Rick's performances. They celebrate his decision to prioritize family and privacy over fame. Cosplayers, tribute acts, and merchandise keep his memory alive at conventions, but in a way that feels more like honoring an old friend than idolizing a star. Stories of casual, friendly encounters with him in New York further reinforce his reputation as humble and grounded, making his mystique all the more powerful. Unlike many celebrities, Rick's scarcity hasn't been a marketing strategy. It's been a reflection of his authentic choices. At the same time, it's hard not to imagine what might have been if Rick had chosen to continue acting after stepping away. With contemporaries like Bill Murray and Steve Martin successfully evolving their careers, Rick's intelligence and versatility suggest he could have followed a similar path, perhaps as a dramatic actor, respected character performer, or even a director. Yet, Hollywood's pressures could just as easily have led to burnout or unhappiness. In the end, his decision to leave gave him peace, proving that sometimes the most powerful legacy comes not from the roles you take on, but from the life you choose to live. Rick Moranis didn't just leave Hollywood. He showed us what really matters in life. While most celebrities chase fame and fortune, Rick chose love, family, and being present for the people who needed him most. His journey from comedy superstar to devoted single father is heartwarming and inspiring. In a world that often values career success above everything else, Rick proved that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is walk away. What do you think? Was Rick right to choose family over fame? Or do you wish he had found a way to balance both? Share your thoughts in the comments below.